I okay. Hi, this is Michael Makovsky. I'm the president and CEO of JINSA. Thank you for joining us today for an update on Gaza, the war between Israel and Hamas. We're fortunate, as always, to have General Yaacov Ayish, retired IDF general, former J3 head of IDF operations, former Israeli defense attaché, and most importantly, JINSA Senior VP for Israeli Affairs. Will be joining us momentarily. Will be retired IDF General Yaakov Amidror, who's been a JINSA Distinguished Fellow and a former National Security Advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu. General Ayish, I was going to turn to you first anyway, but now it makes it easy. I think, one of the things I've found, at least since the Israeli ground incursion began, I guess Friday night, there seems to be more of a fog of war. The news seems a little more murky. I don't think we're getting as much detail. Could you,
Mike, I lost you for a second. Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. I said that, since it seems like the ground invasion began, which was Friday night, it seems that there's not as much information in the media, at least. And I think it would be very useful for our large audience here to explain to everyone how you see what Israel is doing on the ground there. On the ground, on the air, what they're doing in Gaza right now militarily, and then what they're heading to do.
Thank you, Mike. Great to be with you as always. First of all, to your question, nothing here is an accident. Everything is part of the policy, the IDF policy. But let me start by describing that after October 7th, the IDF was very much into a few issues. First, to make sure that the area at the south is cleared and secure. Then the border should be blocked. At the same time, war was declared on Hamas in Gaza, and readiness was part of this declaration, not only in the south, but also in the north. For that sense, the IDF started to mobilize reserve units to the north, to the south, to the home front, Air Force, and some other units as well. Once the area was cleared and secured, the air campaign, which is the first phase of the operation, as it was derived from the government and the cabinet strategic goal to the IDF, the air campaign started, and the Air Force mainly, but not only, started to pound Hamas targets in Gaza, all over Gaza, mainly to suppress Hamas capabilities, fire capabilities, HQs, subterranean systems, and so on and so forth. Once the IDF felt that he's ready to move to the next phase without going into too much details, the ground offensive started. And I don't want to go to any details because the IDF in purpose is not describing what we are doing, where we are doing, how we are doing. It's part of the fog. It's part of the uncertainty that we want to create at the other side. We are not about to provide them any unnecessary or important information. This is vis-a-vis the South. Having said that, at the North, as I described, the IDF since day one mobilized the reservists. and deployed them.
I should, sorry, I know I want to get to the north, but let me just talk about the south. If you mean the south, first of all, there is a safe haven in, I believe, southwestern Gaza. Is that right?
Yeah, but what you call as a safe haven have two dimensions. One of them is the fact that Hamas is using the local population as a human shield and using sensitive places such as mosques, hospitals, and so on as a line of defense and hiding inside or underneath. And for that sake, what we were doing in the last 2.5 weeks, we were urging the local population at the north part of Gaza area and Gaza City to move to the south towards Khan Yunis and Rafah, which is south to the Gaza Wadi or Gaza River. Hamas, as they did in the past, they are doing the same today on a different scale. They are simply using the local population. And for that sake, what they are doing, they are preventing them from leaving the area. They are using roadblocks to prevent cars or wagons to leave their villages.
Yeah, so let me just, though, it seems like, I mean, just looking, for instance, online at Times of Israel, for example, you could look at other publications. It looks like Israel is going into Gaza City. So I think it seems like, from a distance, of course, but it'd be good just to get your thoughts, and then I'll turn to General Amidror. They're focusing on like the northern half of Gaza City. It's like they've cut off Gaza. And it just seems from the perspective, they've cut off Gaza in the middle. They're going to focus on the northern half, which I assume will take time, and then they'll head south. But you want to just explain what it looks like they're doing now that they're going, according to press reports, they're going into Gaza City finally, which is also where the Shifa hospital is, right? Underneath of which I think Hamas leaders have been using, to hide underneath for many years.
This is one place where they are hiding underneath. As I said, they are doing it in many other sensitive areas, to include mosques that they know that we are trying to avoid bombing them, schools or places with certain sensitivity, like UNRWA sites, etc. That's what they are doing. I don't want to describe in details exactly what they are doing, and I'm trying to avoid it on purpose. What I can say is that we are aiming to the heart of their capabilities, and wherever we think it is, that's exactly what we are pursuing to do. With different means, with different tools. I don't want to describe if we are going to do it by foot, air, or some other capabilities.
Okay.
The strategic goal is very clear, and the IDF is determined to achieve it as part of this offensive.
Okay. All right. Thanks, General Ayish. General Amidror, welcome. Why don't we take a step back? How do you see, since the last time, I think it's been a week since we last spoke with you about all this, how you think the last week, what's going on now in the war? I'm not just operationally. I mean like the overall picture. What is this trying to do? The pressure it is facing or not from abroad, including from the United States, for humanitarian pauses and the like. What do you make of where things stand now?
I think that there are two issues that should be emphasized now. First, all the hesitation about will Israel go with the invasion, Israel will not go with the invasion, that fog disappeared, Israel is in. Successfully, the IDF is keeping the fog about the exact situation on the ground, and I think it's very wise. And I'm not sure that Hamas has a good picture of what is the situation. Israel decided the idea was to come to the area with a few directions, not in one big column, but to separate to few efforts. And I think that successfully they are now going to squeeze the Hamas into the area which will be the goal of the operation. And I think it's very important. We have two advantages. I compared it today with a friend of mine who fought in Jerusalem, and I remember in '67, and I remember the battle in the Suez city in '73, and we compared it to the present situation. Where is the difference? What we have today that we didn't have that? And I think that we have two elements which are give us kind of a superiority in these two areas. One is the tactical intelligence, which is going with the forces thanks to the air superiority and the drones that you can find today in the IDF in every, I think, battalion. And it is going side by side with the ground forces in one of the pictures which had been released by the spokesman of the IDF is that the commander on the ground is saying, all my soldiers are in, now you can act. And you hear the guy from Tel Aviv speaking and saying, I see two people 20 meters from you behind the corner. We say, okay, free fire. And within minutes, they had been killed. I mean, it's totally different situation when it is coming to tactical intelligence and close support. One. The second one is superiority that we have in firepower. We have huge capabilities, a lot of capabilities, and many of them are very accurate. So if someone was fired from the window in some place, from this window, no one will fire anymore in the future, because within seconds, fire will go into the. So the combination of tactical intelligence superiority and very high capabilities of firepower is something that gives us all the advantages that we much more than in the past. And I think it's very important to understand we are going slowly because we want to achieve two things. One, security for our people, less casualties, and to give the population on the ground the time to live, to go out. Under the efforts to squeeze in that the population will live, it's against the interest of Hamas. Hamas is blocking them, as General Ayish just explained. In a way, ironically, we have the interest of minimizing the casualties within the civilians, and they have the interest to maximize the casualties within the civilians, because it is giving them all the excuse to apply to the international media, international community. The Israelis are killing civilians, blah, 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 blah. And they're doing whatever they can that the number of civilians that will be killed will be maximized. So this is on the ground, slow moving towards the area which the IDF decided wants to control. It will take time. It will not be ended immediately. And the next stage will be interrogation on the ground, going to find all the facilities, the infrastructure that should be destroyed, entrances to the underground tunnels, and to identify the location of the hostages in one side and the commanders of Hamas on the other side, and to try to kill the commanders and to release the hostages. But no question, the question of hostages is making the whole operation much more complicated. As you know, we had one success. It was a special operation with a very good intelligence. And this is the situation on the ground. I hope that Israel will have enough determination not to agree to any ceasefire. Ceasefire now will stop the momentum of the offensive. Huge mistake, huge mistake. And I hope that Americans, the professionals, can make the decision makers understand that it's against all the rules of war to have a ceasefire now. If there is an issue to take American citizens out of the area, no problem. Very narrow corridor, will be secured by the IDF. They can go in, they can go out. It will take an hour, 2 hours, and then we'll continue. But not a ceasefire. We should not stop the momentum of the operation.
Well, let me ask you on that, because the language, of course, General Amidror, is pause, of course. Now, I don't know, a pause is a short pause or a long pause, but what do you think would happen if there was a pause for certain humanitarian reasons, so-called?
If you be a pause on the whole battlefield, huge mistake, because it will allow the other side to reorganize, to understand exactly what is the picture, that under fire he cannot draw now, and it will stop our momentum. Huge mistake should not be done. I mean, if there is a need for something very limited in time and area, no problem, corridor, we know how to do it, and we have a lot of experience of doing it, and this is the way to deal with the needs of other countries to evacuate their citizens or something like that. A pause in the battlefield, in the whole battlefield, huge mistake. Ceasefire, even worse.
Right. So we're going to come back to you about where we are. Let me just ask you about this, and I know General Ayish, you don't want to speak too much of what Israel's trying to do, but let me just ask you one thing. The IDF casualty numbers, I thought I saw was something around 329 or 339, something like that. They seem very high. Obviously,
no, it's about the 7th of October.
Right. How much
in the operation itself, less up till now, less than 20.
20.
Half of them in one armor carrier.
With the Namer?
Yes, and Namer, yes. Half of them.
332 up till now.
Right.
Soldiers were killed since the beginning of October 7th. In the operation until now, it's 17.
That's it. Yeah. And actually, as Amidror just mentioned, wait, how many were in that Leopard or Namer, as it's called?
11.
11. Doesn't the Namer have an ability to defend itself, or isn't it more protected?
It has, and that will be investigated. Yes.
I'm sorry?
It has.
It has.
So how did you think that happened?
Mike, we won't be able to speak about it. It has, but it's not 100%. It was built not 100%. As everything, it has its own weaknesses, and one of those was exploited.
I see. Okay. Let me go back to you, General Amidror, then. You brought up the pause, of course. What's your view of the U.S. now since last week, given that kind of talk and things, and Blinken is coming to Israel, I think, tomorrow?
I think that the Americans are emphasizing the issue of human crisis that they want to avoid, and to bring food, water, medicine, and so on into the Gaza Strip. I know that the Americans want to bring gas, oil into the Gaza Strip. From our calculation, there is no any shortage of both in the Gaza Strip. Hamas keeps huge amount of that for itself. But at the end of the day, don't tell anyone, the battle will not be decided by the amount of food, water, and oil in the Gaza Strip. This is something that we should take care for humanitarianly, not to avoid any crisis. If the Americans need something to justify the full support that they are giving Israel, it's also okay. That will not make the difference in the battlefield. The Hamas has enough from everything which is needed to continue the fight. And so we are not in a position to make Hamas warriors fasting 3 days before they are meeting the Israelis. It's not the situation on the ground. So it's less important from my point of view than people intend to think.
I see. But do you see now a shift, though, from your vantage point, and how the U.S. has approached this so far, the war in these
No, they are more worried about the humanitarian side, and they want to show that they are taking care for that. And it's okay. We know how to deal with it.
I see. You're not worried. Okay. Okay. I would like to talk about the North. I do still want to get back to the broader picture, but I know General Ayish, you were mentioning, you were starting to talk a few minutes ago about what's going on in the North. We come back to the South, but it seems like there's a limit of how much information we're going to learn. So what's going on with the North, with Lebanon, Hezbollah, and...
Okay, I started to describe the fact that we have deployed quite a lot of units. We fortified our lines of defense. And we are ready not just to defend, but to strike mainly with the Air Force at the north, while continue the offensive in the south. Having said that, since the beginning of this war, we had 92 attempts of Hezbollah to attack towards the Israeli side. Hezbollah lost more than 50 terrorists in different incidents. We started at the beginning with more casualties on our side, 9 since the beginning. But since then, it seems like the forces were adapted their activities, and until now, it seems like they are doing pretty well. Definitely, Hezbollah is trying to show his solidarity. It wasn't as effective as he expected. He wanted to use mainly anti-tank squads, but he lost almost all of them in that attempt. And tonight we saw a new pattern, which we are familiar with from 2006. There was a barrage of rockets simultaneously at the same time on 19 different cities and villages along the northern border. It's kind of a new pattern that he is trying to apply. Tomorrow he is about to address his supporters in Lebanon at 3 o'clock Lebanese time, and it's part of that build-up. And this is on the tactical and operational level. At the strategic level, it seems like they are, stretching the level of escalation to a level which would not drag us into total offense towards Hezbollah. Obviously, we retaliated immediately, but we can say that it's within certain limits of, not to be dragged into a full-scale war at the north at the same time. And that's basically what is going on in the north. And we didn't mention it. It is, while at the same time we can see certain attempts by mainly the Houthis in Yemen, as we've seen them a week ago, and we saw it yesterday, cruise missiles and ballistic missiles that were intercepted by the Air Force and by the air defense.
Right, I appreciate you bringing that up, General Ayish. I do want to get to that. I might flip around a little bit on fronts. Unfortunately, there are too many fronts to be discussing right now, but I want to go back to General Amidror and also talk about, I'm going to go back to the South, and we'll go back to Iran in a few minutes. How have you seen, what's your assessment of in the south of Gaza, the southern part where the people were asked to flee, to which that Israel asked the Palestinians to flee? Have camps set up there? Where are these people living? Who's providing humanitarian relief for these people? How do you assess that? What's going on there?
There are humanitarian agencies, mainly of the United Nations, and through Egypt, food, water, and medicine is coming in. The Egyptians are bringing to the other side of the border an field hospital that they can be evacuated into for people in the Gaza Strip. This is the only Palestinians that they are ready to accept to the hospital. And it is a safe haven in which we don't use, we don't strike, we are very careful in this side. Okay. You ask a very important question. When the war in the north will begin to end, we will have to ask ourselves, what about the south? And the decision will be taken based on the results in the north. Very much depends on, for example, how many of the leaders of the military organization will be killed before the end of the war. Sinwar, Def, and others, and so on and so forth. Question that only after that will be answered, we will have a better situation to understand what should be done relating to the south. The alternative is to do nothing, and another alternative is to continue with the operation. It is not as populated as the north. It much less tense than in the north, and so it will be a decision taken by the situation on the ground, the achievement that we have in the north, the international community situation, and so on and so forth. But this is a question that should be asked day after the end of the war in the north, or towards the end of the war in the north.
Let me ask you another thing, General Ayish. One of on all our every year, and I think most of the audience knows this, we bring retired U.S. generals and admirals to Israel, prominent ones. And I remember, and I mean, we bring other delegations, active duty U.S. officers to Israel also. But one of the things always stuck in my head, as you and I have discussed before, is when the Navy commander gives his presentation, when they try to explain what the Navy does and how important it is, because the Navy doesn't get as much attention, I'd say, at least abroad. Maybe the Air Force does, or, ground Golani and other ground forces and so on. But one of the things that I always remember is that when the Navy commander said, look, in many ways, Israel's still an economic island, very dependent on commercial shipping, and Israel has only so much, inside the country stored. And if there's going to be a war where commercial shipping could be at risk, it could impact, rates will go up. I think it's Lloyd's of London is the insurer. What is the status of commercial shipping right now? Has Hamas also directed their rocket fire at all to commercial ships? Are they, is it just too hard for them to navigate anyway with their more crude rockets? Or is pretty much, even though maybe flights besides El Al are not flying into Israel, but commercial shipping is the same, the situation?
Is it to me, Mike?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Too long a question.
Okay.
So we forgot. I'm sorry, General.
Okay, so regarding that, it's far more easy for Hamas to aim towards the cities. In fact, most of the rockets were aimed towards Ashkelon. Ashkelon is a city 10 kilometers north to the northern part of Gaza. And that's basically where they're aiming most of their rockets, 10 to 15 kilometers from the border. They're aiming to other cities as well, like Ashdod, which have a port as well. But I can't say specifically that they're aiming towards ports or strategic sites. I don't think they have this capability, accurate capabilities. They're trying to compensate on that with quantities, not quality and accuracy. And in that sense, it's a good opportunity to say a word. After they have launched more than 8,500 rockets towards Israel, the performance of Iron Dome is pretty impressive. And especially, don't get me wrong, especially when I'm thinking about those who were hurt by those rockets. Everyone is a world, but the impact of 8,500 rockets due to Iron Dome and the fact that we were attacking and using offensive tools towards their launchers was minimized. The same time, you were asking about the naval corridors. The Navy is playing a significant role at the strategic level. Obviously, they are not just protecting the harbors and securing the entrances, the maritime domain and the maritime corridor into Israel, but at the same time, they are doing a great job since October 7th, where they have destroyed more than 7 kind of speedboats manned by Hamas terrorists that they were trying to land on the Israeli shore. Most of them were destroyed in the sea. One succeeded to land on the shore of Zikim, and they had to deal with them from the sea. And the rest are the terrorists who killed the civilians who were lying on the beach in Zikim, men and women, youngsters, that later on were killed by the military. At the northern sector, they are doing the same. And when you are thinking about our energy assets at the north and all the rest, everything is secured. And so far, it seems like they are doing a very good job.
So let me ask you one more thing. I remember when we took a boat out to the natural gas, one of the platforms there. I mean, you're right there where Gaza is. So clearly those defenses are working. Let me ask you, and then
one of them was closed, not to take the risk, and the other one is open.
Okay. Which one is closed?
I think that
you remember?
Don't remember. I think that Leviathan is continued to operate.
Okay. Let me ask you one more thing, General Ayish, about the missiles. How is the ground incursion impacted? Do you see the quantity of missiles coming from Gaza into Israel, if at all?
So you can see a very significant decline in the number of rockets that they are launching, although they are well prepared to that. And for that sense, what they're doing, they are calibrating their timers and triggers, and they are able to make them launch while they are away. The number dropped from 350 rockets a day at the beginning to a few dozens a day today. And in that sense, it's a good opportunity to say a word about rockets that were launched from Lebanon. They tend to claim that they are behind it. Obviously, we know that Hezbollah have authorized it, if not initiated it. But this is one of the ways to compensate on the declining number that they are launching now when the ground offensive started. It's not only the ground offensive, Mike. At the same time, the air campaign is not only supporting the ground offensive, but continue to suppress the rocket fire from Gaza.
Yeah. Let me turn to something else that was brought up a little earlier, but General Amidror, that has to do with the hostages. Now, do you see, we had yesterday a webinar, General Rich Clark, previous commander of the U.S. Special Operations Command, General Scott Howell, former head of this JSOC, Joint Special Operations, both of whom we've brought to Israel in the last couple of years. We asked them about it, and they don't have any intel, of course, of what's going on because they're retired. But they mentioned how hard it is to free hostages from tunnels. They mentioned, General Clark mentioned that in Afghanistan, a number of hostages that U.S. military forces would free were often by by chance. They just happen to be go after the terrorists, and there happen to be hostages. They didn't know. How do you see? Obviously, there's a lot of focus for proper reasons about the 240 plus hostages. The number keeps changing a little bit in Gaza. Do you see, first of all, how do you think they're going to be freed? Do you see it militarily, maybe, or is it more really going to be dealing with the Qatar, or how do you see this playing out? Or
first of all, I don't know. It very much depends on what will happen on the ground. We have a special agency now headed by General retired Nitzan Alon. What they are doing, all this unit is only one goal: to identify, to locate the places of the location of the hostages. They work 24/7. All the sources that Israel has dedicated to find the hostages. And the minute that they will be located somewhere in the Gaza Strip, the decision will be taken immediately. No strike area. No one will allow to use fire cover in this area. And then the decision will be taken based on the intelligence what should be done. There are two main alternatives. One is to move some of the ground forces into the area and say, guys, you have a new mission, release the hostages. And the other one is what we did in the last operation 3 nights ago, is to bring special forces from behind and to make a special operation in the area. We are very capable in this side. We know how to deal with the urban Arab places. We have a lot of experience in Judea and Samaria doing it almost every night, and we have a very experienced commanders to lead it. So it very much depends on the intelligence. At the end, the key for all this issue, as many other cases, it's good intelligence, and we are working very hard, very hard to get the intelligence. The minute that it will be in our hands, then the decision will be taken.
But one of the things that
it's very important. One important remark: we decided when we went to the ground operation that we will not let Hamas to play with us and to stop the operation just based on promises that they might release some. And so we waited a few days and we understood that it is not serious; it's just to gain time. And we decided to go in spite of the fact that they have these hostages in their hands.
I saw a press conference the other day with Ambassador Ron Dermer, the Minister of Strategic Affairs, that he was with other officials. And of course, as many in the audience knows, he was a JINSA Distinguished Fellow in 2021 and 22. And he was asked about the hostages, and I think he said, the ground incursion he thought would help them free some hostages. And General Clark and General Scott Howell, the U.S. retired generals, said pretty much the same thing. They think it could be useful. But what do you think, General Amidror, what would you like to see in the dealings with Qatar? Because it seems that Qatar, which has been one of the main suppliers, supporters, funders, champions of Hamas, it seems like if any outside party has a lot of sway with them, it would be them. What would you like?
Try.
Yeah,
we try, and they release 4 women before we released one in this operation. And the hope was that they will put pressure on Hamas, and Hamas will be ready at least to release the children. There are babies at the age of 9 months. I mean, something that is a burden in a way. Women, pregnant women, very old people with needs for medicines. And so it didn't happen. And we understood that they are just gaining time and they are not serious about their promises. And this is why we decided to go in. And yes, we believe that by squeezing them and putting pressure on them, they will have to move themselves and maybe to move the hostages. And by that, we will expose and we'll have better intelligence. But it is not promised by anyone. It's not a guarantee, but it's logic. And it might happen. And when it happens, I told you what will be the policy.
What do you think, though? Are there things from the United States that you'd like to see that you think could be helpful in dealings with Qatar to help facilitate freeing more hostages?
I think that the pressure that today can be put on Qatar is very limited because it's the only axis of communication with Hamas. But after the war, we will have to deal in another way with Qatar. Qatar is a very negative force in the Middle East. The damage that they did is enormous, and at least from the Israeli point of view, something else should be emerge out of this war related to Qatar.
I was talking to a U.S. Senator today about it, and JINSA did a lot of work in 2017 on this issue about how we could put a lot more pressure on Qatar in general. They've been playing a double game for a long time with us. Al Jazeera is there. Of course, the U.S. likes the military base there. Let me turn to two other subjects, at least before we finish. One is the West Bank, and I'll turn to General Ayish. There seems to have been a number of arrests of Hamas, or what Israel believes are Hamas supporters, or I don't want to use the word militant because that gets used in the press here instead of terrorists, but seems like there've been a lot of arrests, including of Hamas. How do you assess what's going on in the West Bank right now and what Israel's doing there?
So it's quite clear that there is a whole effort led by the Central Command, by General folks whom you know very well. And I can tell you that it's not only arrests. We are talking about night raids and day raids in a very wide scale, mainly on Hamas centers and Hamas military either supporters or infrastructure. And for that sake, I can tell you that there are many arrests, but not only arrests. Whenever they tackle a resistance, and we are talking about engagements, and in that case, we are talking since the beginning of this war, about 132 that were killed in Judea and Samaria. And on the Israeli side, we lost 2 Israelis. So obviously, it's not taking the headlines due to the situation in Gaza and due to the situation in the north. But in some other days, we are talking here about a certain level of escalations. It seems like it's under control. And we are talking here about a different scale of activities conducted by the Central Command in Judea and Samaria. And you can understand it from the numbers.
Yeah. And there have been some reports about, violence from extremist settlers in the West Bank. Obviously, the U.S. has expressed some concern. Are you worried about that, or how much are those reports very valid? Or
yeah, I've heard the same reports as you, but at the same time, these are the exceptions. Obviously, we condemn what they are doing in certain cases, what certain people are doing over there, taking the law to their hands. But these are exceptions. I would not consider it as something very wide. As I told you, these are the exceptions, and they are taken care of by the police within Judea and Samaria.
I want to turn north again, and then to also talk about Yemen after that. General Amidror, General Ayish mentioned a little earlier about the north, but there are a couple of things going on. It seems like like to get your thoughts. General Ayish, of course, mentioned the missiles and the amount of Hezbollah fighters that have been killed. I think that's two things that have been going on this week, among others, in Lebanon. One, the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Force Quds leader Ghani, who replaced Soleimani that Trump had killed, was apparently in Lebanon this week, coordinating with Hezbollah. And
it is third time from the beginning of the war.
And and I want to ask you what you make of that. If anything, and Nasrallah is supposed to give I think the head of the Hezbollah is supposed to give a big speech tomorrow, and he generally hasn't said that much since the war began. And what do you think that might,
I don't know what he's going to say in the speech. He's recording it in the bunker. It's not a live speech. He's recording it in the bunker, and then they are using it outside. I think the Hezbollah is under pressure. For one side, it's clear that everyone expects Hezbollah to be much more involved, and the leaders of Hamas are saying it loudly. They are very disappointed from the reaction of Hezbollah. Hezbollah is the strongest organization. He spoke very high about Israel. He said that whoever will do something in Lebanon, he will immediately put fire the whole area, blah, 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 blah. And at the end, all the operations that had been done up till this evening are 2 kilometers within the border. It's 2 kilometers in their side, 2 kilometers in our side. They lost more than 50 members of Hezbollah. I think that is the highest number since we left Lebanon almost 20 years ago. By the way,
since 2006.
Yes, they are publishing the names of each one which is killed at the same day to show that they have involvement in the war. But at the end of the day, it's very, very limited to the border itself. All the squads which had been trying to cross the fence, all of them were Palestinians. None of them was Hezbollah members. Hezbollah is acting from the Lebanese side, launching mainly anti-tank missiles, as described by General Ayish. And he wants to show that he is part of it. And I think that the pressure is one side. The other side is really Nasrallah wants to make Binj Bel, Nabatia, and South Beirut to look like Gaza today.
Right, exactly.
I think that when he looked at it and he say, and by the way, just to leak, please don't publish it, the list of targets in Lebanon is 100 times more than the list of targets in Gaza. So the Air Force can walk there 3 months and not finishing the list. And I think that Nasrallah understand when you look at Gaza that it might happen tomorrow if he begins a war with Israel. And the capability to do it in Lebanon is much better than in the south, because it's a huge area. Because of the limitations of the area, you cannot work with more than 4 airplanes at the same time in Gaza. But in Lebanon, 20. I mean, it's another kind of war. And when you look at Gaza, he understands it. So one side is, guys, we have expectations from you and you don't do anything, really. The other one is, if we do, that's what we want to see as a result.
Yeah. And
yes, it will take our Air Force 3 days to organize and to destroy all the opposition. Unlike in Gaza, there are kind of enclaves of opposition to the Air Force in Lebanon. It will take 2 days, but after 2 days, the sky is the limit. In the wrong way of the phrase. Everything will come from the sky, and no one can limit it. And I think that Nasrallah has to consider both sides, and Iran has to consider both sides, because Hezbollah, unlike Hamas, it's a long arm of Iran. Do they want to sacrifice Hezbollah? I'm not sure about it.
Yeah, as you pointed out, I know we had a little a little disagreement a bit, and maybe a tad between you and General Ayish on this, but I guess if I recall correctly, General Amidror, you said last week Hezbollah, unlike Hamas, was created to defend Iran. And
yes, this is the cascade of ready to sacrifice. You know the phrase?
No.
The Iranians are ready to sacrifice the Shiites in Lebanon. Why? They are not Iranians, they are Arabs. The Hezbollah is ready to sacrifice Hamas because they are not Shiites, they are Sunnis, the Palestinians. And Hamas is ready to sacrifice the people of Gaza because they are not Hamas. It's ordinary Palestinians. So at the end of the day, at the end of the cascade, if Iran is the head of it, the people in Gaza are at the end of the chain, and they are suffering from the readiness to sacrifice everyone but yourself. So in a way, I think that the Iranians understand that if they make a move that will look like intervening in the war, it will be ended in Tehran. And this is their nightmare.
You mean that Israel or the United States will
or both,
or both, yeah. And I know, General Ayish, you have a comment. I want to make this. I want to have, I want to talk about Yemen and Hezbollah, but General Ayish, I think you might have an opinion on this.
Oh yeah, I would like to analyze it from a different angle, just to add to what General Amidror described. Going back to October 7th, what Hamas was trying to do was not just to conduct those atrocities, to try and to terrorize the Israeli public. He was trying to create a multi-front escalation or war.
Hamas, not Hezbollah.
Sorry, Hamas. That's what they were trying to do, and Hamas was trying to drag Hezbollah into a multi-front war. And so far, and I'll be very careful, so far they didn't succeed with that. But we have to be very humble with our analysis. Everything is up till now. So far, they didn't succeed in that. And definitely the axis, between Iran and Hezbollah is very clear. And it seems like the Iranians are controlling it quite well. And this is one of the explanations for the constant travels of Khani to visit Nasrallah. But this is so far. Bear in mind that in 2006, they didn't mean that would be the results. And Nasrallah admitted it in person that if he would anticipate such a retaliation by the IDF and by Israel, he would avoid that abduction and that incident on the border. So I think everything should be limited up till now. And it seems to me that things are going to unfold in the next days. It's going to be a longer war, not only in the south. We are going to see more about that in other sectors. We didn't have the time to speak about Syria and the incidents from Syria. We didn't have really much time to speak about the Houthis in Yemen. There are rumors about other proxies that are with intentions to be activated from other places.
Well, that's actually, I do want to spend the last 5 minutes on Yemen, and it is, I believe that Israel used the Arrow defense shield missiles for the first time operationally in a battle to shoot down a missile from Yemen. Is that right? Do you? And then
we did it. We did it because of the deal with Germany. We wanted to show the Germans that that it works. So
yeah, but I thought the Germans already agreed to it. But yes, I guess it's good to buy something. You want to feel good that you bought the right thing. Let me first of all, what is the significance? Is there any significance to this? And how do we look at the Yemen? General Ayish, you just brought it up. I mean, that I have to say, I remember being in Israel like 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, and Israelis were senior defense folks were telling me they're concerned about Yemen. They worried that could be that they could fire missiles back then, but it's the first time that I believe that I know that's actually happened. And by the way, that the Arrow performed well, isn't that right? Per what General is just saying, the Germans should be very happy.
The Arrow is one of the layers of missile defense that we have here. In fact, it's the first layer that we built with the support of the US back at the 90s. Definitely the version that we are using now is a very advanced version. It's a different series of arrows, highly capable, but it's not the only capability that was used for that sense. Not sure that this is the right platform, to elaborate on different capabilities, but it seems like they've proven very effective so far. And this is only one dimension.
Aish, one of them was published. We use F-35 to intercept.
In a second, that's exactly.
Okay.
I wanted just exactly to explain that. One is F-35 that was used for intercepting a cruise missile, and the Arrow for ballistic missiles, and a very close coordination between the IDF and the US military to intercept other threats in the other day. So these are the two different dimensions that I wanted to emphasize, as General Amidror mentioned.
Let me ask you, General Amidror, one Arab official, important Arab official, mentioned to us this week, I don't know if it's his assessment is correct, they thought that Hezbollah might have more direct operational influence on the Houthis than the Iranians right now. I don't know if they're, and he didn't even know if that made a difference, by the way, but I wonder if you agree with that, and do you think that Hezbollah is urging the Houthis to conduct these missile launches, maybe also partly to get some of that pressure that you referred to off itself?
I think that the Iranians use Hezbollah to train the Houthis, but the missiles and the cruise missiles, all the technology is coming from Iran, not from Hezbollah. So I think that at the end, such a decision to use the first time after so many years in the Middle East and a long-range ballistic missile is probably a decision which was made in Tehran and not in Beirut. If I have to bet, it is more involvement than of the Iranians. They found an easier way to show that Hamas and everyone in the region that they are involved without risking Tehran.
Yeah.
And this is the rule. They are ready to fight to the last member of Hezbollah and the last member of Hamas, but Tehran should be secured. That was the whole idea of the Ring of Fire, to build around Israel, very close to Israel, capabilities that will be used against Israel when Tehran is very secure, far away. And at the end of the war, we will have to ask ourselves some questions about it and what should be done. I think that today, during the war, we should not do anything regarding the Houthis. Good defense and concentrate on Gaza. And don't let the Houthis to move us from the main threat and the main goal of the war. And let's see what will happen in Hezbollah. I don't know. We are, as described by General Ayish, very well prepared. I visited the north. My impression that the spirit of the people there is very high. They are ready to go to a war, and the amount of percentage of the reserve duty calling is unbelievable. It's 180% average. In some of the units, it's 200. I mean, in the list that they had, it's 100 people, and people came from home and say, we are part of the USA. But 10 years ago, you are been out of the list. You didn't turn. Say, no. It's a war we want to be in. Yeah. So this is some of the noises about the logistic problems that you heard at the beginning was because of that.
Exactly.
I'll conclude with this question. I know it's been an hour, so we'll stop, but I'll just ask one thing. On the last point you made, General Amidror, I think I don't know, I thought maybe it was you who coined that phrase, Ring of Fire. I know it's used a lot. I think it been you, just to give proper attribution. I think
you don't have to pay for that. It's for free.
Okay, you haven't copyrighted it. Okay,
yes.
Fair. But I believe in footnoting. So I think that one last thing, as you point out, they're going to defeat Hamas That's the most important immediate issue. But you wonder, with all this going on, after that, then Israel is going to have to think, I guess, how long they're just going to deal with the proxies. And because as both of you keep pointing out, Iran's the one that's behind everything. So.
Yes, this is a question that we are dealing with, I don't know how many years. And immediately after the war, we have to think about three immediate questions. One is what to do with the south part of Gaza. Should we continue the operation? The second question is, okay, what will happen in Gaza the day after? And there are some teams which are working on that. The decision was not taken and shouldn't be taken till the end of the war, because you understand what happened in the ground before we make such a decision, and what will be the international arena limits and atmosphere and so on. And the third question is what to do with Hezbollah, assuming that tomorrow Nasrallah will give many excuses, but Hezbollah is not going into the war. What Israel is doing with Hezbollah? Hezbollah is 10 times stronger than Hamas, and they can do exactly the same operation. And who can guarantee us if it's not going to happen 2 years from now? Will we wait, or we bring back, as will be my recommendation, to the table the notion of preemptive wars, which were out of the tools that were in the decision makers in Israel. One of the guys who was prime minister in Israel, and he is not prime minister today, told me once that the most important job of the government in Israel is to broaden the gap between the walls. And no, the most important is to prevent threats from being too big to deal with. Right. This is more important than to broaden the gaps between the walls. So we have to reconsider it. We did it once in 1956. It was an opportunity with the Brits and the French, but how we deal with it, and Iran will be one of the issues towards which we have to think with terms of preemptive wars. What does it mean? Iran is 1,500 kilometers from Israel. It's not behind the border. It's not Hezbollah. It's not Hamas. It's something totally different. What can we do? What should we do? What preparations are needed? And combine it with the question of nuclear Iran, it's making it even more complicated. So yes, there are a few questions that we should discuss immediately after the war. Today, till the end of the war, we should not make any mistake and focus all our capabilities in one issue, to destroy Hamas to the level in which we don't have a threat from the south part of Israel, from the Gaza Strip anymore. It's history. It's not in the future. It was part of bad history, which will not come again.
We'll conclude. There's a lot more to ask on that last comment, I think, of yours, but we'll have to save it for next week, or the next one is a teaser for coming attractions, I think, because I know General Ayish just brought this up a number of times. I mean, you have how many hundreds of thousands of Israelis between the north and the south that are displaced?
Okay.
200?
Formally, 125,000 were displaced and evacuated by the government. Another 200,000 evacuated themselves. So all in all, we are talking about a bit more than 300,000.
That hasn't gotten enough attention. I know we talked about it, General Ayish, last week a bit, and we'll have to talk about it in another update. But I think based on what General Amidror said, these are questions, because obviously the people in the South don't want to go back unless they're 100% sure and the government doesn't want them back, I know, unless they could be secured. And then there'll be a question of those who left in the North. When could they go back if Hezbollah is still there intact? And how do you handle the North? So I will stop right here. We've maxed out more than maxed out our hour. But hopefully those are teasers, but maybe we could talk about that next week in our Gaza war update. Thank you. I want to thank you, Generals Amidror and Ayish, for joining us. I know it's late in Israel now. And I want to thank the whole audience for joining us. We have obviously more webinars ahead of us. I hope you continue to join us at JINSA as we continue to discuss various elements of this war. Thank you very much. I wish everyone here in the United
Thank you, Mike.
States
Good night from Israel.
Stay safe in Israel.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Laila Tov, Amidror.
Laila Tov.